What's going on, guys? Smoky Metal here, and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. If you're watching this, thank you for the support. I appreciate you. Today I'm going to be showing you my variation of Moxsy's chain Zane. I call it the Clairvoyant chain. Now, I used to run a chain Zane build and it was a lot of fun to play, but I'm personally not a huge fan of using only one gun. So I tried to make it a little bit more flexible in terms of the guns you can use. With that said, this build centers mostly around the new Clairvoyance assault rifle, so you do need the second DLC to build it the exact same way that I did, but you can really use any kind of cryo weapon or any kind of weapon with the Sentinel cryo anoint, because what we're doing is we're essentially maximizing Zane's green tree cryo abilities while still speccing far enough into the blue tree to have a ton of kill skills up and do a ton of damage. Now, I also use a redistributor in this video because we're still keeping a lot of the same attributes like the artifact, the action skills, etc. from the meta chain Zane. So it's still going to absolutely tear enemies apart. The redistributor is still a great gun. It's still going to work perfectly on this build. However, with that said, this build is a little bit less min-maxed than the meta, so you're probably going to be doing less DPS in exchange for more flexibility, better crowd control. Not to mention that I think it's more fun to play with this than with spamming the redistributor. So the Clairvoyance that we're building around is a new legendary assault rifle from the Guns, Love, and Tentacles DLC. It's a Jacob's rifle that fires cryo rounds which will explode on critical hits and ricochet to nearby enemies, and you can farm it from Critchy and Cursehaven near the Withernot Cemetery. Critchy's actually the only enemy in the game that'll drop this rifle. It's his dedicated drop, and this is the location right here. And I'll show it to you guys on the map as well. So the quickest way to get there would be to fast travel to Withernot Cemetery and then go to this little highlighted region right here. So let's get into the meat of this build. We're mostly going to be speccing into the blue tree and the green tree, and then we're going to be getting a couple passes from the red tree, Synchronicity, Borrowed Time, Donnybrook. So let's jump into this blue tree right here. So first off, we're going to be putting 4 points into Violent Speed. Then we're going to be putting 4 into Violent Momentum for that damage boost. 3 into Salvation to keep us alive. That's going to be most of our health regen right there. And I don't max Salvation all the way because you're doing crazy damage, so 9% of that is going to be more than enough. I put a point into Drone Delivery to throw grenades, and 3 into Cool Hand. Now, Cool Hand is going to be really important because we're using a Jacob's rifle with a slow reload and a small magazine size, so we're going to be reloading quite a bit, so that little boost in reload speed is going to help us out a ton. Then I put a point into Death Follows Close to keep our action skills up a little bit longer. And then we're going to take a look at our 2 most important damage skills, Violent Violence and Playing Dirty. So we're going to go ahead and put 3 points into Violent Violence and take 1 from our class mod. Then we're going to actually max out Playing Dirty. Now, Playing Dirty is the most important skill in this build because the ability to fire 2 simultaneous bullets with the Clairvoyance is going to take our DPS from something like 50,000 to close to 100k, and you'll be able to hit for that with every trigger pull. Next up, we're going to put 2 points into Good Misfortune, which is going to allow us to keep our action skills up for a little bit longer. That kill skill is usually going to be up, so our action skills aren't going to go down much. And now let's jump into this red tree right here. So then you're going to go ahead and put 3 points into Borrowed Time, which is going to allow you to keep your action skills up for even longer. It's going to synergize really well with Good Misfortune, really keep that Sentinel and the barrier from going down. After that, we're going to put a couple points in Synchronicity just to move down the tree. And then we're going to get to Donnybrook, which is a really big one. Now, I only put 1 point into Donnybrook because I have a +3 from my class mod. However, if you don't have a comm with that +3, then you're going to want to juggle around your points a little bit. So now let's get into the green tree. First off, we put 5 points into Adrenaline, which is going to increase our action skill cooldown rate. So, you know, if that barrier goes down, then a couple seconds and it's back up, it's no big deal. Then we put 5 points into Ready for Action to increase our shield recharge rate. And then 5 points into Brain Freeze. Now, Brain Freeze is really, really important because we're shooting with a Jacob's gun. It's pretty accurate. So we're going to be hitting a lot of crit spots, and every time that we hit that sweet spot, we have a chance to slow or freeze an enemy, which is going to synergize really well with Cool, Calm, and Collected. As far as Confident Competence goes, it's just a bonus in your gun damage and your accuracy. Now, Best Served Cold is a tiny bit controversial. I have 4 points in it. A lot of people say it's useless, but I actually think it's pretty useful because despite the low damage of the Cryo Novas, they're pretty cryo efficient. But if you don't like that, just put a point into Futility Belt or something. Now we're going to get into the quote-unquote capstone of this build, Calm, Cool, and Collected. When we freeze an enemy, and we're going to be doing that a lot, we'll regenerate shields, health if that's full, and action skill timer and cooldown if that's full. Since we're running a barrier, we're going to be at full health and shields a lot of the time, so this is just going to keep our action skills going for as long as they need to be. Then I went ahead and put 2 points into Refreshment, which is a lifesteal ability which gives us something like 16% of damage dealt to frozen targets, which is really solid. Now, as far as my barrier augments go, I use Charged Relay, which is going to increase my movement speed, thus increasing my damage every time I'm near my barrier. And I also used All-Rounder, which is going to protect me from all sides. Oops, sorry. Moving on to my Sentinel augments, I used Winter's Drone, which is going to let it freeze stuff for me, thus proccing Cool, Calm, and Collected. And I also used Bad Dose, which is going to increase my movement speed and thus increase my damage through Violent Momentum. So let's get into the loadout of this build. First off, we have the Clairvoyance. I think I've talked enough about this gun, so we're going to move on to the Redistributor, which will always be good for clearing out rooms of enemies. You know, sometimes I'll switch between the two to do a ton of single target damage to a badass with the Clairvoyance, and then clear out the rest of the room with the Redistributor. For the cryo passives in this build, you're going to want the Sentinel Cryo Anoint on your Redistributor. Like I've said, this build functions very similarly to Moxsy's Chain Zane, so the Redistributor is going to work the exact same way and be just as deadly. Then after that we have the Electric Lob. Now I personally love this gun on this build because, as you know, the cryo element isn't the greatest against shields, so if I have like a boss or something with a big shield, I'm just going to spam it with the lob and just take that shield down and then finish him off with my Clairvoyance. Now we're going to get into our shield, which is really important. It's a cornerstone of this build. For your shield, you're going to ideally have an Old God in the cryo variant. We're using this shield because of its insane cryo damage boost, which is going to make our loadout even more deadly than it already is. If you don't have DLC 2, however, you'll probably be able to get by with a Snowshoe, which is something that either Wotan or the Valkyries drop, and you'll be able to proc Cool, Calm, and Collected that way. For our class mod, we're going to be using Seeing Dead, pretty self-explanatory. And for our artifact, we're going to be using an electric banjo. Now, I would love to try this build with either a Snowdrift Autos Idol or a Snowdrift Victory Rush, but I haven't been able to find one yet, so I'll update you guys if I do and if it somehow makes this even better. Now, for our grenade, we're going to be using the Stormfront. Now, the Stormfront is an absolutely sick grenade, especially on a cryo-centered build, because it's going to obliterate enemies' shields, which is something that our primary element kind of lacks in. Now, I'm sure there's other grenades that are viable, or perhaps even better, like the Hex. I haven't tried them. I'm personally a fan of the Stormfront, but if you guys try them and they work better, let me know. So that's the build, and now I'm just going to show a couple bossing clips. I sped the Grave Ward one up because I kind of suck at him. I'm sure a lot of you guys will be able to do it faster. Anyway, I'll post a link to the build in the description below for your convenience. Thanks for watching.